Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, Numerics with Nadia. In today's video, we're going to do another beginner geometry based video. I'm going to go ahead and link the playlist here for you guys. For any of you guys that are in geometry, all of these videos will be very useful for you. For today's lesson, we're going to introduce and define a few very important types of angles, and those types of angles are going to be supplementary angles, complementary angles, vertical angles, as well as adjacent angles. And then, like always, we will end off our lesson with some practice problems. So to start out, let's go ahead and define all these different types of angles. We'll start off with complementary. Complementary means that the sum of two angles is 90 degrees. So as you guys can see in this diagram here, we have a right angle. X plus y will give us 90 degrees, so they would be complementary angles. The second type of angle we have is called supplementary. Now, supplementary means that the sum of two angles is 180 degrees. So we have x and y. X plus y would give us 180 degrees, so they would be supplementary. A little hint or a key for spotting supplementary is that it forms a straight line. So as you can see, x plus y forms a straight line, supplementary. So x plus y in the second example would be supplementary. And our next type of angle is called an adjacent angle. And what is an adjacent angle? Adjacent angles are an angle that shares a vertex. So for example, looking at this diagram, angle BAD and angle DAC, they share that same vertex A. So x plus y would be adjacent angles, and the little shorthand or key to spot an adjacent angle is two angles that are next to each other. And for our fourth and final type of angle, we have vertical angles. Now, where do vertical angles occur? They occur at the intersection of two lines, and vertical angles are equal to each other. So what are the two pairs of vertical angles here? We have the top y and the bottom y. They are vertical, right, across from each other. And then the other pair of vertical angles is the two x's. Those are also across from each other, although they appear horizontal here, they're still vertical angles. So our two x's are vertical angles and the two y's are vertical angles, and vertical angles are always equal to each other. So both of those x's would have an equal measure, and so would the y's. And lastly, for our vertical angles, our little shorthand or key or how to spot it is two angles that are across from each other. So now that we've gone through and defined all four types of angles, I would highly encourage you guys to pause the video here, make sure you have all of this written into your notebook before we move on to our practice section. So for our practice section for today, the directions say to state whether the following angles are complementary, supplementary, vertical, adjacent, or neither. Then solve for x where applicable. So most of our practice section today is just classifying these different types of angles, but we'll have a few that require solving as well. So if we look at number one, we have two angles, and these two angles look like they would form around 90-degree angle, right? Two angles that form a 90-degree angle are complementary angles. So let's see if this is true. The measure of our first angle is 26. The measure of our second angle is 64. Is 26 plus 64 90? If it is, then we can state that these two angles are complementary. We know that 26 plus 64 is 90. So number one, 26 and 64 are complementary angles. Now we'll look at number two. The two angles in number two are 44 degrees and 136 degrees. And those two angles are forming a straight line. So these, we have to check and see if they are complementary. The way we do this is 44 plus 136. We have to check and see if that equals 180, which it does. So we can classify these two angles as supplementary. We can also classify them as adjacent. Why? Because the 44 and the 136 are next to each other, and it is possible for one angle to have multiple classifications. So number two, our angle is both supplementary and adjacent. Now let's move on to number three. We have two angles, 70 and 19. They look like, if anything, they could form a 90-degree angle. So let's go ahead and check. Is 70 plus 19 90? It is not. 89 does not equal 90, so number 3 would classify as none of the above, right? Neither of these classifications that we've gone over. Now we'll move on to number 4. For number 4, it looks like we have vertical angles, right? And since we have the measure of one of the angles as 7 degrees, we can assume that that x will be the same measure because vertical angles are equal. So x will be 70 degrees for number 4. And now for our 5th and final practice question, we again have vertical angles. We are given that one of them is 128. Since we know that 1 is 128, we can assume that x is going to be 128 as well because, like we just went over, vertical angles are equal. And with that, that wraps up our practice section for today. I hope you guys enjoyed today's lesson, reviewing what complementary, supplementary, vertical, and adjacent angles are. Please feel free to like the video if you enjoyed it, comment any questions on this topic or any other video topics you would like to see down below. Please share this video with a friend, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you guys next time.